Hello, everyone. We are going to talk about culture of safety today. More specifically, we're going to talk about just culture. This is going to help to satisfy the requirements for your national registry, as well as will apply towards your state recertification. All right, so first off, we're going to do a little bit of definitions, a little background with some of this stuff. So punitive culture is the way that America has historically been run, from businesses to healthcare, from industry. And a punitive culture is institutionalizes a model that promotes shame and blame. So in this culture, the accountability for any issues lies with the employees themselves. The employee is expected to be perfect and is expected to perform exceptionally. And when something happens, it is always the employee's fault. The employee faces disciplinary action of varying levels for any and all mistakes. This culture creates a culture in which mistakes are hidden. So rather than fessing up, rather than admitting to issues, if something occurs and it can be hidden, then people are going to hide it because they don't want to face disciplinary action. They don't want to face the shame. They don't want to face the negative consequences that comes with things. Now, part of the problem with this punitive culture is talked about in this quote. The single greatest impediment to error prevention in the medicine industry is that we punish people for making mistakes. So mistakes are inevitable, and we'll talk about a little bit about mistakes here shortly. But sometimes mistakes happen and they are not the fault of any person. It's a different issue when it is the fault of someone, but mistakes in general do happen. So in the just culture, this is a person-centered model that offers a different view. In the just culture, we recognize human error, that people do make mistakes. In the just culture, we are able to distinguish between mistakes and behavioral choices. So if you make a mistake, we'll address those issues. But if you choose to take shortcuts and you choose to not obey rules, then we will deal with those issues as well. So to err is human is a concept. There's actually a book written about to err is human, if you wish to look into that. And it talks about medical errors. It's kind of specific to the medical industry. And it looks at this punitive culture and offers another alternative, which is the just culture, and how to approach these issues, how to solve these issues. So we'll talk a little bit here about what this error to err is human is. So human error, an example of that would be, I forgot to do the 2-hour check. And in this instance, this is a product of our current design system. There could be a flaw in a process, a procedure, a training issue, design issue of how this works, environmental issue. And so that's how we're going to manage this particular issue. This person forgot to do a check. They didn't choose to ignore that they needed to do a check. They just forgot simply to do that. And so we're going to look at this error, and we're going to try to figure out how we can prevent this error from occurring in the future through processes, procedures, training, design, and environment. We're going to make it easy for this person to not forget. The next level we're looking at is going to be at-risk behavior. So at-risk behavior is a behavior, it is a choice where the individual believes that what they did is either insignificant and is not going to cause a problem or an issue, or they can feel that they are able to justify what they did or what they didn't do. An example is someone did a one-person transfer of a resident who required a two-person transfer because the resident needed to use the bathroom and everyone else was busy. So we're going to look at this issue and this problem, and we're going to try to solve this problem. And how are we going to do that? We're going to do this and manage this through, we're going to remove incentives for this at-risk behavior. We're going to create incentives for healthy behaviors, and we're going to increase situational awareness. So in this situation, the person decided that it was either worth the risk or the risk was insignificant to do a one-person transfer. And so they did that so that the resident could go to the bathroom. So by removing incentives, we remove the incentives for the at-risk behavior and we create incentives for healthy behavior. We could do all kinds of various type things, doing competitions between shifts, between stations, or things like that when it comes to situations such as this, and making sure that we have enough people available. Look at situational awareness. Maybe in this case, everybody else was busy. Could somebody have stopped what they were doing? Should we maybe change some procedures or some protocols to make it where we always have someone available to help? All kinds of different things that could be thought through on this process. The next thing we're going to talk about is reckless behavior. Reckless behavior is a conscious disregard of unjustifiable risk. So I knowingly avoided completing a treatment because it is a complex and time-consuming task. Basically, this person did not feel like doing the work that was required to get the job done. So how are we going to manage this situation? Well, this one is where we're going to do differently. Since this is an at-risk behavior, it is a conscious decision. Somebody knowingly did something wrong, we're going to punish that person. Whereas previously we did coaching with a person, and then the first one was we consoled that situation and we remedied that through other processes. So when reckless behavior occurs, there is no choice except for to issue the proper punishment and disciplinary action. So in this to err is human, in this just culture, we look at every instance and we categorize it as to where it would fit. Was it a human error issue? Was this an at-risk behavior? Was this reckless behavior? And then we're going to go down the path that is most appropriate to mitigate that situation. So how do we create a just culture? Employees know that optimal safety is valued. Employees must know that optimal safety is valued, and that has to be one of the highest priorities. It's got to be one of the core values is safety. So when errors do occur, they are seen as learning opportunities. Again, people make mistakes, things happen. So we need to approach that situation as what can we learn from this? How can we prevent this from occurring again later? How can we cr create this atmosphere and environment so that we can just move forward and not place blame and not be so harsh and critique and discipline everyone? So a large portion of this has got to be reporting errors and near misses. And we have to encourage people to do that and acknowledge when they do those things. It has to be non-punitive unless punishment is actually required. So we want to make sure that we know about errors and near misses so that we can prevent future errors and future near misses and future mishaps. So when we come across an issue, and maybe it didn't actually occur, but it very well could have occurred, we can address that issue before it actually happens to someone. Employees have to be held accountable for their choices and not their mistakes. So again, if somebody chooses to do what is wrong, then they have to accept the consequences for those choices. If someone makes a mistake for various reasons, then we have to correct the mistakes. We have to provide education. We have to provide policies, procedures, processes, or whatever to make those mistakes where they won't happen again. And we can make the employees a part of that process. We have to have clear guidance about what is acceptable behavior and what is unacceptable behavior. That's fairly well addressed, but there's got to be clear-cut standards without gray spaces, without allowances for variances here and there. And we have to define limitations, and we have to stick with those things. In creating the just culture, it is important for more than just reducing errors. So we want to do more than just reduce the errors. We want to create a team. We want to create ownership. We want to bring people together. We want people to, by reducing errors, reduce lawsuits, reduce injury, reduce patterns of reckless behavior. We as human beings have an innate sense of fairness and justice. We all want to be treated fair. We all want justice for things. You know, if someone does wrong, we expect that to be corrected. We expect punishment to be appropriate for that situation. Just the same, if a mistake has happened, we don't expect that someone would be punished for a mistake. We expect that that mistake would be corrected and education would occur and people would be brought up and reassured and not punished for those things. People do want to work and are happier in places where they perceive everyone is treated justly and fairly. So as we create this just culture, then we create this environment that boosts morale, that causes people to be happy. Everybody knows that people are treated fairly. They understand and they'll know that if they make a mistake, that they're not going to get punished for it. But at the same time, they know that if they choose to do wrong, then they will get punished for it. So there is a place for all of these different routes and avenues when it comes to creating a culture of safety in our system. So this culture of safety begins with the leadership. The just culture, you have to have leadership that provides proper oversight, that understands how the system works, that reinforces the system and that supports the system. And the first thing they have to do is remember that leadership is a behavior, it is not a position. So they have to act like leaders, not just hold a title. Titles are important and formal leadership is important, but they need to understand how this process works. There's people in positions of formal leadership who do not act as leaders, and they hurt people in their organizations by how they respond and how they act. And we have to correct those issues as well. We need to discover person-centered leadership behaviors that lead to a just culture, and then we need to nurture those. So we want to find those leaders, and we want to find those traits and attributes that help to support this person-centered culture, this person-centered leadership. Some might think of this as servant leadership style, and it somewhat is. So we need to nurture those behaviors and those people whenever we can. So given all this, think of a time when you or someone you know was hurt or disappointed by a formal leader. We've all been there. We've had a leader that didn't act like a leader. They were more self-focused and self-centered in their approach to things, and not necessarily looking out for their subordinates and the people they were in charge of. And they made decisions. They may have punished people that made mistakes that shouldn't have been punished. They've made various errors in their own right as leaders. And that's what we want to overcome. We want to always remember things that, and examples of things that we don't want to be, and that'll help us to keep our focus straight as we move forward. Now, there is a no blame culture. It's a different type of culture. In a no blame culture, they do not make the same. The idea is that we don't make the same mistake that many who have entered the person-centered journey have made. So the person-centered journey is all about me, and the no blame culture tries to step away from that and not make those same mistakes. We have to distinguish between a just culture and a no blame culture. So in a no blame culture, nobody is at fault. They don't place blame on anybody. Whereas in a just culture, we're not looking to place blame on people. We're looking to find out, is this an error? Is this an omission? Is this blatant disregard for the rules and regulations? So we're looking at human error, at-risk behavior, and reckless behavior when we talk about a just culture. A just culture is a much higher accountability for both the formal leader and the employee, because everyone has a part in a just culture. So we're going to create a just culture by doing some of these. Practice accountability. So we have to holding others accountable is not punishing people. Accountability does equal growth, and growth equals caring. Caring equals influence, and influence equals leadership. So this is what a leader should look like. They should be accountable. They should be growing. They should be caring and influencing people, not punishing people. So you cannot be a leader unless you hold yourself and others accountable. And that's one of the big pieces for leadership, is they're responsible for holding others accountable, but they're also responsible for holding themselves accountable. So as we hold ourselves accountable, here's some questions we could ask. Do I have all the information before I make a judgment? So if someone comes to you with a complaint, if someone brings an issue forward, you should not just jump to conclusions. You should not just make decisions and judgments. You are responsible to gather all the information that you can, so that you can look at the entire situation and have all the facts, have all the responses, and that you can make the proper and appropriate decisions. You have to have clearly communicated your expectations with people. If people do not know what they're expected to do, it's kind of hard to hold them accountable if they don't do those things. So our expectations of people need to be clear. And just the same as their expectations of you as a leader need to be clear. That's something that really should be done in the very beginning when we're working with people, is kind of establish those rules. What is my expectation as a leader from you, and what is your expectation as a subordinate from me? And we can work out and iron out any discrepancies and make it all work. The next thing you want to do is ask yourself the question, have I done a root cause analysis? We're not going into what a root cause analysis is and how to do that here, but that is something you have to do, is you have to look at and and you have to figure out what exactly is going on in that situation. You have to ask, was this a human error or a personal decision? Going back to what we were talking about, was this a simple mistake? Or was this an at-risk behavior? Or was this just a blatant decision to do something they knew they shouldn't have done? We have to ask, have I given this person everything he or she needs to be successful? So that's what we have to do on a daily basis. Is we have to empower our subordinates. We have to empower each other to make the correct decisions. We have to give them the tools necessary to make the decisions. We have to give them the education. We have to give them the space, and we have to make sure that we are giving them everything they need to do their jobs and to make the right decisions. We have to ask the question, have I listened to the employee's reason for their behavior? So as we're doing this investigation, we have to find out, why did they do what they did? Maybe there is a reason. You may agree or disagree with it, but there is a reason. And that's how we're starting to categorize this. Was this an at-risk behavior? Maybe somebody chose to do something that we considered to be an at-risk behavior because it was, in their eyes at that time, the best choice to make. And that could lead to the discovery of problems in processes, problems with protocols, problems with thought processes or system processes or whatever. And so we need to make sure that we ask and find out that question as well. And the last thing on here is, am I certain that this is not where the employee will grow? So we want to make sure and ask that question, what can be learned from this situation? Is this a mistake? Is this an at-risk behavior? Is this a choice? And is this something where they're going to learn from? And how are they going to learn from this? What are they going to learn from this? And have our ducks in a row, so to speak, so that when we make our decision based on answering all these questions and having all this information, that we make the right decision. And a lot of times these decisions may not affect only that person. It can affect the system, especially if a system error has been discovered. So holding others accountable. How do I care for this person and help him or her grow instead of tearing them down? What does that look like? So when someone makes a mistake, an error occurs, we kind of classify that as an error, as a at-risk behavior, as a blatant disregard for whatever, and we're going to take the proper approach. And no matter where that error, that issue falls, we don't want to tear people down. Even if we have to discipline someone, we want to do it in a way to, number one, let them know that behavior is unacceptable, but at the same time, with compassion, and use even that as a learning tool and a way to elevate that person. You can find out a lot about people when you do this properly. You have to weigh the risk, and you have to look before you decide an issue, whatever this is. You have to look, see what it's going to look like. If I went down path A, what does path A look like to administer to this person? What does path B look like to administer to this person? And path C, and however many paths that you may have available to you to remedy a solution, we have to look and see what that's going to look like. Again, we're not looking to tear people down. We're looking to build people up and empower them and fix problems. So here are different things and different powers, as they say, that people can use. So there's the first one is to compensate somebody. So kind of buy them off, pay them off, so to speak. It is not a good way that we want to look at things. So I can give you money or services as if you'll do things the way I want you to do them, if you'll do what I want you to do. It's coercion. It's bribery. That's not how we want to do things. Condescend power. So with the condescend power, the word condescend is really equated to and associated with punishment. So it's negative for sure. And we get people to do what we want them to do here by threatening and or inflicting adverse consequences. So this is, where you treat people differently. You can issue punishment that's not fair or just. You can just belittle people, put them down, keep them suppressed. And this is really tearing someone down and not building them up. The only power that we want to use is this power, conditioned power. And so with conditioned power, what we're doing is we're using our knowledge, we're using everything at our disposal, and we change the way somebody believes somebody acts by explaining to them why their behavior needs to and should change and what it should change to. So when something occurs, an error occurs, and we address that error, we set the person down and we talk to them and we explain to them what they did wrong or what was wrong and why it was wrong, what they should have done, how to make it better. And we get them by this power of conditioning, so to speak. We persuade them with facts and with paths to move forward so that they will change their behavior willingly because they gain understanding and they then have a desire to want to change and to want to do things differently. We have to stop settling for less. We can't just accept things when it comes to safety. We have to step up. And in order to step up, we want to have these Triple Crown winners. We want to have people that are competent. We want to have people that are reliable and people with great attitudes. And we can help to develop these people. We can encourage people. There's lots of ways that we can help to contribute to this culture. We have to develop standards of conduct. Everyone has to understand and be held accountable to the same standards. They don't have to be long or complicated. We have to create a caring ethos or environment and a sense of security for everyone. So we have to make everyone a part of this. Everyone's got to understand, everyone's got to know what's going on, and we have to make everyone feel as though they're safe and that they matter and that they have a free environment to ask questions, to report near misses or errors or whatever. Embracing conflict. Everyone has to be trained in conflict resolution. We should all learn how to resolve issues at the lowest level. We should be trained in conflict resolution. Managers should be trained in conflict mediation. So if something goes beyond that resolution state, then the managers are supposed to be able to step in and mediate that issue, whatever it is. The expectation is then communicated that all conflict will be resolved before it bleeds over into the chief's level. So again, keeping things at the lowest level possible. If you can fix a problem on an ambulance, on a call, then you fix it. If you need to involve a supervisor, you involve a supervisor. And we step it up only as necessary. So, principles for ethical decision making. We have to know what are the principles that will be guiding us in all of our decision making. A lot of times these are set at the chief level and even above it sometimes. Our guiding principles, our standards, our whatever it is, we have to know what these principles are. Everyone has to be educated on them. Everyone has to know what they are, what they mean. And then we want to use a team approach to decision making as much as possible. Without going into this a lot, there is a concept that kind of was taken from aviation, crew resource management, that kind of goes along with this team decision making. Everybody has an input, everybody has a say, especially when it comes to safety. Everybody is a safety officer. Everybody has an obligation, not only a right, but an obligation to speak up if they see something unsafe, if they see something that can potentially cause an issue. And the whole idea is that we prevent an event from occurring by speaking up before the event occurs. And then we can go back and analyze that and look and see where this near miss occurred and how it can be prevented in the future. So we have to engage and empower. We have to kind of change the way that we think. So the old culture thinking is I need to get buy-in of my staff. So I have an idea, I have a plan, and I need to get my people to buy into what I want. Well, the new culture thinking is I need to have my staff to take ownership. And part of one way we can do that is have the staff to help create these new policies and procedures or whatever it is. They can have input. They might not be, depending on what it is. It may be something that you have created. It may be something that is handed down to us. But if we can have our mindset of not just to get buy-in, but to take ownership and to make it ours, then we're going to be more proud of it. We're going to more likely be willing to be a part of it, make it work, report things that we see, and to make changes appropriately. So ownership only comes from having a part in shaping the plan, just like I was saying. You cannot separate authority and accountability. So that's kind of shared in a lot of ways. If you want people to be accountable, you must give them the authority that comes with it. I really like that. So people have to have the ability and be empowered to do what they need to do, make decisions that they need to make. So I'm not super familiar with Daniel Pink Drive, but I like some of these comments that are here. So the course of human freedom has always moved in the direction of more freedom. And there is a reason for that, because it is in our nature to push for it. So we desire freedom. We desire as humans to have freedom really in every area. We don't like to have constraint. We don't like to feel like we're oppressed in any way. The secret to high performance and satisfaction at work, at school, and at home is a deeply human need to direct our lives. So you get choices. You get to make your own decisions of how you do things, where your life is going, what you do with things. And all the decisions you make are your decisions. You're not being always told what to do. And that goes with having ownership. And then this last quote is, we are born to be players, not pawns. So a difference between the players and the pawns, or players make decisions based on input, whereas pawns only go where they're told to go and do what they're told to do. We don't want to be puppets. So we do this by hiring nice people. We don't just hire compatible workers. You don't hire somebody just because they can do something. We want to hire people that can do something, but also that are nice, that can play as a team member. We want to use a team approach for hiring. We do that already. We have panel interviews and we do different things. But we want to make it a team decision when we hire people as best as we can. We want to engage the staff in the process. Again, we're working and doing that. You have the staff, we have our online people, and there is input. We want to ask questions that reveal how caring the candidate is. So an example would be, share with me the nicest thing that you've ever done for someone. So we want to engage them and get them to start to tell us and reveal to us the type of personality they have, and make sure that we're getting nice people, and people, again, that are team players. Everyone that's a part of this process also has the ability to observe behaviors. So we're looking at behaviors that can indicate compassion and caring, or on the flip side, that can indicate non-compassion and non-caring, and use those things to help weed people out so that we get the best fit all around when we hire people. Okay, so advice for formal leaders. A lot of the stuff previously has kind of been talking to leaders, and in a way, we're all leaders in some way, form, or fashion throughout this process. But our formal leaders need to maybe change their mindset a little bit and see that they no longer have all the answers. That's not to say that they don't know what to do. It's just this way of thinking, and it's a way of including, and it's a way of giving power to your subordinates and giving ownership to your subordinates. So we're going to look at some of these questions. So some of the questions as a leader, formal leader, you should be asking when presented with things would be, what do you think I should do about that? Get input. Have that person, start to brainstorm and start the process of thinking about solutions on their own. This empowers them. Another question is, how is it good for the resident or the public for you to do that? So when there's someone doing a behavior or doing something maybe they shouldn't do or questionable, one of the best ways, rather than just calling someone out or or chastising someone to make them think about it, you know? How is that good for the public? How is that good for your patient? And most of the time, people will realize, well, you know, maybe it's not. And then again, they might find that it is. Um, that's educational, it's enlightening to those people, and it's a call for them to do the right thing. Another question that could be asked when it comes to education of others is, what did you learn from that experience? So when people have an experience, good or bad, we can learn things from all of those experiences. Ask, what did you learn from that experience? And give them an opportunity to share. So we can inspire others by asking, why are we here? You know, what is it that brought you to be a part of the fire service? What caused you to want to be an EMT, a paramedic, or whichever level that they are? What caused you to want to do more? Um, it inspires not only that person, but it can inspire others as well. Here's a question. Do you have everything you need to be successful today? This might be one of the best questions in this list. Should be a question that we should ask ourselves as leaders, in that, am I giving my people everything they need to be successful every day? But we also should ask ourselves and our subordinates, you know, do we have everything that we need to be successful today? A good way to start the day. So how were you able to accomplish that? I'm amazed. This shows appreciation. It shows value, um, especially when you have a difficult situation or something that's very unusual, out of the ordinary. Um, Acknowledging people's ability to critically think and to problem solve is important, and it shows appreciation, and it builds character. It builds value. What is your greatest challenge today is a good way to help to uncover problems. Um, at the end of a shift, especially with newer people, but even with veteran people, we can ask that, what was your greatest challenge today? It can help uncover problems. It can help uncover areas that someone can improve upon. Um, and it just helps us to think about things. This last question is, do you know how special you are? It seems probably a little lame to a lot of you to ask that question, but maybe we should rephrase that question for our purposes. Um, but either way, when you let people know that they're appreciated, when you let people know that what they do is not overlooked or unseen, then it helps to lift people up. And maybe instead of having that as a question, we should use that as a statement and just actually tell people how much we appreciate what they do, how much we appreciate their input, how much we are appreciative of the quality of work they do, the fact that they get all their paperwork done, their patient care is admirable, or whatever it is. We need to let people know that we like what they do and that we value what they do. So as we create our just culture, we have to design safety systems. Design of safety systems is an ongoing thing. It's a constant reevaluation. We have to remove opportunities for error, which is risk management. We have to perform a root cause analysis when errors do occur. Again, that is beyond the scope of this lecture. We have to provide excellent training and retraining in core competencies and systems. So we have to continue to train, not only on the things that we've previously learned, we want to keep our skills sharp, but we have to train on new skills, and we have to have competencies and checks in place so that we can test and make sure that we are maintaining a level of proficiency and efficiency in what we do. And we have to have our system as a whole performing well, and we can do that and evaluate that through data that we collect. And we have to have a supportive structure for when errors do occur. So having this just culture up front, it helps to create that. So when errors do occur, they don't fall through the cracks and they're not mistreated or mishandled. And so we have to not only have this supportive structure, but we have to train the staff from every level how this structure works. We have to teach people to be respectful of others. And when mistakes happen, to treat them as what they are, learning opportunities so that we can move forward in our pursuit to provide our citizens with the best service possible. If you have any questions over this or anything else, please contact someone in training. Thank you for your time.